Welcome to the debate, love or legacy, breaking the curses your parents left behind. Today we analyze the ideas from the book Unbinding Love, Reclaiming Your Power and Breaking Generational Curses in Relationships.
And honestly, curses is a heavy word to start a Tuesday. We are diving into a premise today that is equal parts fascinating and, if I'm being honest, a little terrifying. The central argument we're looking at is that your romantic failures, the bad breakups, the recurring fights, all those "why does this keep happening to me" moments, are rarely just bad luck. The claim is that they are the result of these invisible blueprints or, psychological curses inherited from our families, our culture, and our earliest experiences.
It is heavy, but I think it's necessary. The core tension we are wrestling with today is really about agency. Can we actually rewrite our own psychological coding to change who and how we love? Or is analyzing love through these lenses like power dynamics and cognitive biases just a way to, sterilize the entire experience? Is love a problem to be solved with an algorithm, or is it a mystery to be lived?
I'm firmly in the mystery camp on this one, or at least I'm deeply skeptical of the alternative. The ideas presented in this material, they treat relationships almost like a business audit or a psychological case study. I worry that by pathologizing normal human behaviors and looking for curses everywhere, we just create this cynical view of romance that actually prevents connection. I mean, if I'm looking at my partner as a set of data points to be optimized, am I really loving them?
I see why you'd think that, but let me offer a different perspective. I think the whole love is blind mythology is exactly what keeps people trapped in toxic cycles for decades. The argument here isn't about cynicism. It's about shifting from blind love to conscious love. If you don't understand the architecture of your attachment, the specific blueprints you inherited, you're doomed to repeat the same dysfunction. It's not about optimizing a partner. It's about debugging your own software so you stop crashing the system.
Debugging software. See, that's exactly the language that gets me. But let's get into the specifics because the vocabulary used here really matters. The material uses very dramatic language, breaking curses, unmasking architects. It suggests we need to hyperanalyze every single interaction for imbalances. My fear is that if you treat your partner like a project, you just kill the trust. You kill the spontaneity. If I'm constantly looking for a bias in my wife's tone of voice or analyzing whether she's acting out her mother's passive aggressiveness, I'm not listening to her. I'm diagnosing her.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. The curse metaphor isn't about melodrama. It's about accuracy, It's about the subconscious nature of these patterns. Most people feel trapped precisely because they ignore the underlying structure. If you believe love should just happen organically, you are essentially handing the steering wheel to your subconscious programming, and that programming was written by your parents' marriage 20 years ago. The text introduces the concept of earned security, which I think is just crucial here. It's the idea that true spontaneity is only safe once you've done the rigor of clearing out the old scripts. You can't improvise jazz if you don't know how to play your instrument first.
Okay, let's talk about that instrument then. This brings us to the first major pillar of the argument, the blueprint.
The relationship blueprint, yes.
The concept here is that we have these echoes from our past. It claims that simply observing our parents, whether they screamed at each other or just simmered in quiet resentment, creates a template that we can't escape without some kind of serious intervention.
Well, it's more than just a claim. The arguments lean heavily on attachment theory, specifically the work of Bowlby and Ainsworth. We aren't just talking about habits, we are talking about neural pathways that are formed in infancy. The material breaks this down into 4 primary categories: secure, anxious preoccupied, dismissive avoidant, and fearful avoidant.
Let's clarify those for everyone, because these terms get thrown around on social media a lot and often, incorrectly.
Sure. So imagine a child. If their caregiver was inconsistent, sometimes loving, sometimes cold or absent, that child might develop an anxious preoccupied style. Their blueprint says love is unstable, so as adults, they need constant reassurance. They're the person who texts 5 times in a row because silence feels like abandonment. Now, on the flip side, if emotional needs were ignored or even punished, a child might become dismissive avoidant. They learn that independence is safety and intimacy is a trap. The argument is that if we don't unearth this, we unconsciously seek partners who validate that very insecurity. An anxious person will often find an avoidant partner because that chase feels familiar. It feels like home, even if home was painful.
See, I understand the theory. My struggle is with the determinism of it all. It feels like we are telling people they are broken machines. If I label myself dismissive avoidant, does that actually help me change? Or does it just become a self-fulfilling prophecy? Oh, I can't be intimate. I'm avoidant. Sorry, that's just my blueprint. It becomes a crutch. Don't blame me, blame my childhood.
That is a risk, certainly. But the alternative is acting out those patterns without knowing why, which is infinitely worse. The label isn't the destination, it's the map.
But look at the solution proposed. The implementation roadmap suggests things like a 15-minute journaling session to answer self-assessment questions like, what did love look like in your childhood home? I have to ask, can we really claim that a 15-minute writing exercise is going to undo decades of psychological conditioning? That feels incredibly reductive. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because it misrepresents the purpose of the tools. No one is promising a 15-minute miracle cure. You have to view the roadmap as an entry point for data collection. You can't change what you don't see. The concept of earned security explicitly counters your fear of determinism. It posits that neuroplasticity exists. You can change your attachment style from insecure to secure, but only through deliberate, conscious work. The journaling is just step one of becoming the detective of your own heart.
A detective of the heart. It sounds poetic, but let's look at where that detective work actually leads us. Because this moves us to the second core topic, and this is where I really started to bristle. Power dynamics.
Ah, yes. The section on unmasking the architects?
Exactly. The material argues we need to analyze the specific architects of power in a relationship: financial power, social capital, physical appearance, and information power. It reads like a negotiation manual for a hostile corporate merger, not a guide to romance.
How so?
Well, it asks us to track who has more money, who has better friends, who is arguably better looking. It suggests that if I have more social capital than my partner, say I'm the one with a big family and the local reputation, that I hold a form of leverage. Isn't this view incredibly transactional? If I'm sitting across from my partner thinking, well, I make 20% more money, so I hold the financial power card, I'm not in a relationship, I'm in a cold war.
I think that's a visceral reaction, but consider the alternative. Ignoring power doesn't make it go away. It just makes you a victim of it. The discussion isn't telling you to use these things as weapons. It's telling you to acknowledge that they already are weapons in the wrong hands.
But explicitly tabulating them seems to invite scorekeeping. It turns a partnership into a zero-sum game.
Not if the goal is equilibrium. The arguments here cite toxic manifestations like gaslighting, which is the abuse of emotional power, or stonewalling. But it also brings up soft power, which is much more subtle and insidious. This is where the analysis really shines, in my opinion.
Okay, define soft power in this context for us.
Soft power is subtle coercion. It's not do this or I'll leave you. It's I'm the one who always plans the vacations, so we always go where I want. Or I'm the one who manages the budget, so you have to ask me for permission to buy things. If one partner always controls the environment or the finances, that creates a dependency that just erodes the other person's self-worth. It's the slow drip of losing your autonomy.
But where does it end? The material talks about unconscious gender roles, noting the historical pressure on men to provide and women to accommodate. I agree those exist. But if I'm constantly auditing my relationship for soft power imbalances, I'm going to be keeping score. I paid for dinner, so you need to accommodate my movie choice. It breeds resentment. It turns generosity into a transaction.
I disagree. The goal isn't scorekeeping, it's protection against resentment. The pressure on women to be emotionally nurturing, for instance, often leads to them sacrificing their own needs just to keep the peace. Calling that out as a power dynamic isn't cynical, it's necessary. It allows the couple to say, hey, we are falling into this trap where I'm the parent and you're the child, and then correct it. It's about moving from power over to power with. And you can't share power if you pretend it doesn't exist.
I can see the utility in preventing abuse, certainly. But the proposal applies this level of scrutiny even to our own internal thoughts, which brings us to the third topic, The spell of the mind. This covers the cognitive biases.
This is honestly one of the strongest sections for me. The spell refers to how our own brains sabotage us. We think we are objective observers of our relationships, but we aren't. We are storytelling machines, and usually the stories we tell ourselves are wrong.
The psychology is sound. I mean, concepts like confirmation bias are well documented. If you believe your partner is lazy, you will spot every single dirty dish and ignore every time they took out the trash. You are literally filtering reality to prove yourself right.
Exactly. And the sunk cost fallacy, staying in a bad relationship just because you've already invested 3 years into it. You think, I can't leave now, I've put in so much time, so you just throw more good time after bad.
My issue isn't with the science, it's with the application. The material suggests an action plan involving reframing biased thoughts. It asks us in the heat of the moment to pause and ask ourselves, am I committing the fundamental attribution error right now?
Right, and what is the fundamental attribution error, just so we are all on the same page?
It's when you attribute someone's behavior to their character rather than their circumstances. So if I snap at you, it's because I had a hard day and traffic was terrible. If you snap at me, it's because you're a jerk who doesn't respect me. We judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their actions.
Precisely. And that error is probably responsible for, 90% of household arguments.
But here is my problem. Who can possibly do this kind of mental gymnastics in the middle of a fight? A worksheet about my attribution arrows. I'm dissociating from my emotions. I'm intellectualizing my pain rather than feeling it. It feels robotic. It feels like I'm treating my anger as a logic puzzle instead of a valid emotion.
I think you're viewing the action plan as a suppression technique, but it's actually a clarity technique. The argument is that our default mode is self-deception. It cites the self-serving bias. We take credit for our successes but blame external factors for our failures. That bias destroys relationships. I'm the hero, you're the villain.
But isn't there value in just saying, I'm hurt? Why do I have to audit my hurt before I express it?
Because I'm hurt is valid. I'm hurt because you don't love me and you did this on purpose is a story, and it's often a false one. The reframing exercise isn't about not feeling. It's about breaking the spell of distortion. If you don't pause to ask if you're being fair, you are likely just acting out a delusion. The action plan is a tool to ensure your emotions are based on reality, not just your insecurities. It protects your partner from your own distorted thinking.
Fair enough. I suppose checking your reality is rarely a bad thing. But let's talk about the specific tools proposed to fix all this. This is the kingdom and the tools in the later sections. This is where we get into what is called liberated love.
Right. Reclaiming your kingdom is the metaphor for setting boundaries.
The terminology is a bit grandiose for me, reclaiming your kingdom. But my main grapple is with the I statement framework. I feel, when, because, I need. It sounds like HR speak. It sounds like something a human resources department mandates after a workplace incident. I feel frustrated when you leave your socks on the floor because it violates our shared space agreement. Does liberated love have to sound so corporate? Does this leave any room for passion?
I would argue that passion without boundaries is just chaos. I think people mistake volatility for passion. The material defines 3 boundary styles. Passive, where you say nothing and resentment just builds and builds. Aggressive, which creates fear and compliance. And then assertive, which is the kingdom. The I statement is the tool of the assertive style.
But it sounds so unnatural. I feel heard when you... It just feels scripted.
It feels unnatural because we are so used to you statements. You are so messy. You never listen. You always make us late. Those are attacks. They trigger the amygdala, the fight or flight response in your partner. The moment you say you always, the other person stops listening and starts defending. The I statement bypasses that defense mechanism. It's not corporate, it's surgical. And regarding passion, the argument is that true intimacy requires safety. You can't be vulnerable, which is the prerequisite for passion, if you don't know where the walls of the kingdom are. If you don't know what will set your partner off, you walk on eggshells. That kills passion faster than any awkward phrasing ever could.
I see the logic, but I'm still stuck on the vetting checklist for new partners. The proposal is that we need to vet for things like growth mindset and emotional regulation almost immediately.
Absolutely. Why wouldn't you?
On a first or second date. So tell me about your growth mindset regarding conflict resolution. It seems incredibly unsexy. You're interviewing a candidate to fill a vacancy, not getting to know a person. It removes the mystery of discovery.
But consider the stakes. The entire premise here is that if you don't vet for these things, you invite the curse right back in. If you ignore the signs that someone lacks active listening skills or responsibility, two things right there on that checklist, you are signing up for a relationship where you will be unheard and blamed. Romance based on ignorance is just a ticking time bomb.
But isn't the discovery part of the romance finding out who they are over time?
Discovering their favorite music is romance. Discovering they can't regulate their anger 6 months in, after you've moved in together, that's not discovery, that's trauma. The advocate for this material would say that true romance is knowing someone is safe, consistent, and capable of conscious connection. You vet early so you don't have to divorce later.
I suppose that brings us back to the central conflict here, doesn't it? Is safety the ultimate goal of love? The material seems to think so. It values equilibrium and clarity above all else. And while I see the value in avoiding toxicity, I do wonder if this implementation roadmap approach just sanitizes the experience.
I'm not sure it sanitizes it so much as it stabilizes it. Look at the case study of Lila, presented in the material. She went through a breakup. Her old pattern would have been desperation, stalking his social media, begging for closure and self-blame. Her conscious approach was acknowledging the pain, seeking support from her chosen family, and maintaining her self-respect. She didn't avoid the pain, she just navigated it without destroying herself. That isn't sanitized, that's resilient.
That Lila example is strong, I'll give you that. And I do appreciate the section on sustaining freedom. The idea that you need a supportive community and not just a romantic partner is vital. Too many people make their partner their entire world, their therapist, their best friend, their roommate, their lover. That just crushes the relationship under the weight of expectation. However, the relationship audit concept, checking in monthly to reflect on relational wins and areas for growth, it just feels like a performance review. So, honey, in Q3, you really underperformed on the romance metrics.
But again, businesses do performance reviews because they want to succeed. Why do we treat our most important relationships with less intentionality than our jobs? We plan our careers, we plan our finances, but we expect our relationships to just run on autopilot? The relationship audit is simply a mechanism to ensure you aren't drifting apart. It's about intentionality. It gives you a dedicated space to fix small things before they become big things.
I think that word intentionality is the key difference between us today. You see it as a safety net, I see it as a potential cage. But I will concede this. The material makes a very strong case that our autopilot is often steering us right off a cliff. If we just do what comes naturally, we usually just do what is familiar, even if it hurts us.
Exactly. And that brings us to our closing thoughts. We've scrutinized the blueprints, the architects, the spells, and the tools.
From my perspective, as the skeptic here, I still hold that this analysis is fascinating but potentially overwhelming. There is a real risk of over-intellectualizing every emotion. If you treat your partner like a project to be managed or a set of power dynamics to be balanced, you risk losing the magic of human connection. Sometimes a fight is just a fight, not a manifestation of a generational curse. Sometimes love is messy, and no I statement can fix that. We have to be careful not to optimize the humanity out of our relationships.
And I respect that caution. But my takeaway is that the magic people cling to is often just a cover for dysfunction. The methods we discussed today, from identifying the blueprint to setting boundaries, are the only way to ensure the magic doesn't turn into a nightmare. Agency is the ultimate romance. Knowing why you love, how you react, and what you need isn't clinical, it's empowering. If we don't do this work, we aren't loving someone, we're just reenacting our parents' marriage with a new co-star.
I think we can both agree on one thing, though. The concept of the blueprint is sticky. Once you start seeing these patterns, the attachment styles, the biases, you really can't unsee them. You start noticing them in your friends, your family, and definitely in yourself.
No, you can't.
Awareness is irreversible.
So we leave it to you, the listener. Is your relationship fate, written in the stars, or is it a blueprint you can redraw yourself?
Thanks for listening to The Debate.